one of the things that I teach my clients is like, ask God, who do you say I am? We're always asking everyone in the world. We're asking significant others and we're looking for validation. And all we want really is just to be seen and understood. And no one sees and understands us better than God. And when we can then reciprocate and say, I know, I can articulate these specific things, we're never going to know him fully or understand him.
Welcome to Follower of One, where faith meets real work. We're a global community helping others move one notch closer to Jesus. Wherever you are, that's your mission field. You are a missionary. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Follower of One podcast. My name is Addison Williams, your host, and I'm very excited to have a special guest with us today, Miss Katie Ann with Katie Ann Coaching, calling in from Salt Lake City, Utah. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. It's really cool whenever I get to meet faith-driven entrepreneurs, business owners, and leaders. And then there's something that continues on with that. I feel like we've now known each other for probably close to a year, I would say. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it's just over a year now.
Yeah, time flies, which is so
Yes.
cool to have it come full circle and have you on the show to share what you're doing in business, but most importantly, how you apply your faith to that business. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about your story, what brought you here today, and we'll continue to dive right in.
Yeah, so my journey even to coaching starts with my faith journey. So I actually grew up Mormon and was raised in the LDS church, super staunch. Like I never thought I would not be a Mormon. I was diehard. Like I had an excuse and answer for every objection about Mormonism and how it wasn't Christian. I knew all of it. And then I went through a divorce and had a family friend challenge me to read the Bible. And I was like, of course I'm going to read the Bible. I always read the Bible. I know the Bible. And I was fully convinced I was going to convert them to Mormonism. 100% was my plan. And we're reading the New Testament, and I'm reading the words of Christ in Matthew, where he's answering the Pharisees' questions about which husband the woman who marries the seven brothers is going to be married to in heaven. And he says, you fools, don't you know you're neither given nor received in marriage in the heavens, but you're as the angels? And I was like, I know I've read this before. Like, I knew I had read this several times. And I'm looking up all the Joseph Smith translation. I'm looking up where's my expanded, because that's what you learn when you are Mormon. You learn that there's a translation that is correct and it's Joseph Smith's interpretation, and that there's an enlightened understanding about the Bible. That's literally what they call it, which I know sounds absolutely horrific to Christians. But and I cringe even saying that now. It's like I understand now how that sounds. But I was looking for all of the updated revelation about what this could possibly mean, because it couldn't possibly be that, because in Mormonism, eternal marriages and families are a really big deal. It's one of the main founding doctrines of the church, and how they market really and get many of their conversions, because they allow people to understand, hey, even though your family member has died, you're going to get to be together forever in heaven. You're going to get these eternal families. There's a seat at every table, is basically how it's presented. There's a house, there's a table. This is where your family belongs forever. You get them for eternity. And I was like, but this is Christ directly speaking.
Mm.
And something about it this time, when I was reading this and I was realizing these are Christ's words directly. It wasn't one of the apostles. It wasn't one of like the prophets. It wasn't a comment from one of his followers. It was his direct words. And something about that this time really made me stop and pause. And I thought, for the very first time, I think I might be wrong about my faith. And that began a faith journey that was accelerated. It's only been 3 years since that day. And that whole experience, actually, not even 3 full years, it was November of 2022. Wow. Okay. So that
Okay,
has
we're right
been
there.
not that long ago. Yeah. Yes, it's basically I'm still like just coming up on the time of season where Paul went away for 3 years. Like I've not even fully reached that amount of time since. But Christ, I really feel like it was spiritual blindness. And once he took those blinders off, it was like the floodgates opened and I could not get enough of the Bible and I could not get enough of understanding what does Christianity and what does the Bible actually teach outside of what Joseph Smith taught. And I was able to take several different classes here. Luckily, I am in the Utah Valley, which is the hub of Mormonism and the homeland for Mormonism. But that also means there's a lot of missions here to help people coming out of Mormonism. And I was able to take several different classes to help me differentiate and discern between what was I taught versus what does Christianity teach, what does the Bible actually teach. And it was just an amazing experience. I continue to just be in awe about what it teaches. And the more that I learned about the Bible, the more that it intertwined with my training as a coach. And I realized all of my training as a coach is about thought work. And I'm reading the Bible and I'm like, this is thought work. And this is like Christ telling us how to discern truth from error and how to discern the voices that we're inundated with, which is what I teach in my coaching. And so I was coaching families with children who have special needs. I have a daughter who's profoundly deaf, and I pivoted to divorced Christian women. So helping women post divorce who are Christians and trying to rebuild their lives. And I really wanted to have a deep kind of understanding of the Bible. So I went back to school to get a degree in biblical theology. And so I'm
Wow.
finishing that up.
Okay, so you're finishing that up. Does that mean that
Yeah.
graduation is December? Or are we looking at May of
Oh,
next year? How far along are you?
August, because I'm doing a dual degree with business and leadership. So my religion classes are all done in January. I'm taking my last religion class, and then I just have some business and leadership classes, and I'll be doing internships there. And so I'll be officially August of 2026. I will be done.
Wow, that's fantastic. If
Yeah.
I may, I think that it's really cool just to see that journey, but it sounds like you have this urgency of your faith. You
Mhm.
have this urgency of the stories that you tell and the impact over the last 3 years that have really brought you to this conversation today. So, if you would talk about the urgency of faith, what does that mean to you? How does that intersect into everything that you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I've always had a very strong desire to follow God and to know God. So I told you my daughter is deaf, and when she was 8 years old, we lived 3 hours in a very rural little town and in Moab, Utah, actually. And the closest, she didn't have, my biggest priority for her was she's fully ASL. So she doesn't have any auditory input. So I always wanted her to learn the gospel. So we always made it a priority for her to have access to God. That was my first and foremost priority for her. And so we would drive 3 hours to church so she could go to a deaf ward and a deaf community and be able to get that. So that's like the foundation of just me, who I am. I've always had just this deep longing for God. And as my marriage progressed and I knew like something's wrong, and I was like, Lord, I know this isn't really all there is. And so it was about like 10 years before my divorce, my ache really was just like, if you could have a hole in your side, that's what I felt like for so long. Like something is missing in my life. And so by the time I went through my divorce, I was so desperate just to know where God wanted me to be and where He was and to be where He was. And so I think that I was open to anything He had to say, anything He showed me. I was just like, if you could be rock bottom, I felt like I was spiritually at rock bottom at that spot. And I just wanted to know him and to be where he was and to be doing what he wanted me to be doing with my life. And once he opened those, it was like finally getting the meat. You know how Paul talks about, like, I'm just going to give you the milk because you can't take the meat. I was like, I've been getting milk and now I finally have the meat. And it's like Psalms tells us so many times, like, my soul thirsts for you like a parched land. That's what it feels like. Like I just can't get enough of the word and what he has to say. And it's like the way he's been able to teach me and show me and continually open my eyes and just bigger and bigger. It's like I had a friend tell me the gospel's like a puddle and an ocean. It's shallow enough anybody can wade in it, but deep enough you'll never get to the bottom. And
Mm,
I feel like just swimming in the ocean. And I can't, it's just the most amazing experience I've ever had.
that's fantastic. So many
Yes.
great things said there. If I could double down on one thing, I would just
Yeah.
love, obviously, you're on fire for God right now, which I mean, it's just like radiating, like, let's go. You're ready to go through a wall with your
Yeah.
Jesus, especially the puddle and the ocean analogy. I love that. Just comprehending the God of the universe loves us enough to give us the scripture, and for us to be able to just have a taste of that is amazing. Let's
Yeah.
look at it from a different perspective for a moment. Let's talk to the people that might not be quite there. They're on the fence of this, who is this God thing? What is this all about? And I don't even know where to start. So I would love for you to speak to that first question and then just give some ideas of how other people can just introduce themselves to quiet time with God. What does that look like for you? And speak to that to the audience.
Yeah, so I say, when you have a desire, God's just going to meet where you're at. So whatever you feel like drawn to, this is what I love about God so much is he knows us so personally and intimately that Psalm 139 is just on my mind a lot lately, but he says that like I have searched you and I've known you and I know all your thoughts before they are even formed. And we don't have to even know what to ask for. We don't even have to know where to start. He's going to draw us like wherever we feel led, he's going to guide us to exactly, and he's going to speak to us in exactly the way we need to be heard. We need to hear him, right? So, like for me, I think I really had to be drawn through the word because like I said, I knew every objection about Joseph Smith and his character and all of these things I already knew. But I had to know. I say in its nature, the Bible is anti-Mormon. So like it is, but he's gonna just open it up and just get curious and just like be willing, just open, like, where are you, God? What do you have for me? Like, he's going to show you. And it's going to be not just personal, but it also might be a little bit of work. Like, I teach my clients, like, just like any relationship requires some effort, your relationship with God is the same. You've got to show up and put some effort in, and you're going to get whatever you give. And so, while he's going to draw you and he's going to take your heart and he's going to show you have to bring something also, some energy, some effort, some willingness. And I will say, like, once I went through my divorce, I have 5 children and they ranged at the time from 16 to 3. And I was full-time mom. I did everything. And then all of a sudden I had whole weeks to myself because we did 50-50 custody. And I had a whole entire week all by myself when I was used to being not 5 minutes. Like I couldn't even go to the bathroom without fingers underneath the door. Like I never had 5 minutes alone to myself. But then I really had to be weeded and pruned. Like I was pruned and I was like alone. And I feel like I always tell people that God always says, now that I have your attention, like
Mhm.
I had to sit and I had to be still with him. I didn't have anybody else to turn to. I didn't have my family. My closest family lives 6 hours away. And I had left, my religion. I'd left my entire community. I'd left my marriage and my family. I literally had nobody left to turn to. And so had to turn to God. I was desperate for anything. And so when I wanted to have somebody to talk to and I didn't, I would start talking to God. And when I wanted to have some kind of comfort, I would just ask for God. So it really requires you to have some alone time. And it doesn't have to be hours or weeks long like I had. I think that was why, my journey was accelerated because I had so much time. But 5 minutes is really all you need to have a genuine heart to heart conversation with him because he already knows everything that you're thinking, anyways. He already knows what you're bringing to the table. You're not hiding anything. You're not bringing a new revelation to him. He already knows. So just start where you're at and let the hunger grow and just let him guide you and show you and speak to you. And it's just, you'll be amazed how he speaks to you. And the more that you do that, the more you practice, the more you hear his voice and the more clear it is. And the more you discern between what he's trying to tell you, my sheep hear my voice, but we have to know him. And so if you don't know him, you can't hear his voice. So give yourself some time and just be patient with the process, just like you would be patient with the process of building a relationship with any human.
That is so good. I think of two things. I think of the Michelangelo painting where it's Jesus and it's Paul, and Jesus's finger is pointed down like this and Paul's is extended, but it's the purpose that we have to go forward and we have to touch it. Jesus is always there, But in the moment, we have to remember that we have to take that action step. And that's exactly what you're talking about in terms of intentionality. And then also, you talked about prayer. I was having a conversation with an individual last week, and actually, this was yesterday. This was not last week. Time flies. But he said, what would happen if we prayed like God was actually listening?
Yeah.
What if we prayed like God was actually listening? And it's exactly what you just said. He already knows what's on our heart. He already knows all of the hairs on our head and the sand grains in the ocean. And so, why would we not articulate that prayer for us to unravel in that silence? I know for me, as an achiever, as a learner, as a doer, sitting still is not
Mhm.
easy for me. But when I do, it certainly comes back because I'm a writer and I just started
Oh.
writing again because somebody
Mhm.
challenged me to write through specific words. And then I've started writing again and I just found that desire to do that. But it's the same way. Whenever we write, we articulate our deepest thoughts and our deepest feelings. And it's the
Mhm.
same with prayer.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And it reminds me like, God is always there. He's always present. We don't pray to change his will. We pray to show we're humble and we're submissive to whatever his will is for us and to draw ourselves closer to him and where he's at. Because he's present, he's there, he's drawing us to him, but we do still have to do something in order to recognize
Yeah.
that he's there, to be able to really identify like he's talking to me over here in this way. Because we have I actually just went on this whole thing about the will of God, but we have this idea that we're going to bend his will or impact his will in some way by the prayers that we have or how much faith we have. And the reality is like we're not going to change his plan overall. Like he might allow us to bend in some ways to our own desires of our hearts. And that's like prayer is just bending the desire of your heart to what is his desire and getting and building and strengthening that relationship. And the closer you are, the easier it is to hear him and the more clear he is. And it's just like, I just can't get enough of it. It's like the best ever.
Yeah, that's so good. People always quote Jeremiah 29:11, which is great. It's talking all about the plans that God has. But then the key is in 12 and 13, which says, when you seek me with all of your heart, there you will find me. And I feel like your journey is the epitome of seeking me, seeking God with all of your heart. And you've found him. And it's certainly present with that, which is encouraging. So, whenever we think about your faith journey, I would love to pivot into the marketplace. As somebody who coaches women, interacts with other people, your children, going to school, all of the things, how do you see your faith playing out day to day?
I would just say my faith is my entire identity. It impacts everything that I do. And I don't live in a way that I feel like I'm just going through motions. Like it impacts everything. We pray on the way to school every day with my kids and in my coaching, like it's present in everything that we're talking about because we're really, some of these women are really hurting. Most of them have been betrayed and then abandoned, and they're managing, wrapping their brain around all those things. And some of them are just coming back to God. And so they're figuring out what does their relationship look like now with him and how do they even build that. So it was one of the reasons why I wanted to go back to school and have like that more robust understanding of the Bible and the biblical worldview and those things, because I think it just permeates. I think everything is first on a spiritual level. And I think true health is physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and financial. And if you're neglecting anyone, you've got like a lopsided table going on. And I feel like it's spirituality is the foundation of it because I just think it permeates into everything else. And when you can have that rock of our Christ, he's supposed to be our foundation, right? He says, be like the wise man and build your house on a rock and it will never fall. It's going to be great. If you don't have that foundation and you don't even know who he is and you don't even know how to build, everything else is going to feel unstable
Yeah.
because it's not built on. how he's guiding you. And like we do get to have the desires of our heart, and he will say, like, as long as it doesn't change his sovereign will, he's going to let us have. Romans tells us that 124, like he gives us up to the desires of our hearts. He's not going to force us as long as it doesn't change his sovereign will. But and that's the same as understanding like how does his will impact. And sometimes it doesn't matter in some situations, but overall, I think it does because I want to know what's the desire of his heart and how do I get his desire to be my desire? How do I bend and just let go of my own pride, my own idea that I have all the answers? I heard a thing that says true humility is being willing to wait on God's timing. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't have that. So I'm
Yeah.
working on that one. So there's
That
just
is,
all of these. I was reading in I think it's in First Peter 3 where he's talking about the divine attributes of God and where you build on all of these. He says if you can build on all those, you'll never fall. But it's like steadfastness, godliness, brotherly affection, and love, and it ends in love. And just like any one of those things we're falling short of on an every moment basis, right? So it's like, how can it not permeate into everything? Because everything about God is the beginning, like in everything that we do. So he's in all of it and he has a play and a say, and we're all his creations. So if we're all impacting each other, but I'm not doing it in a way that people know, I know who God is, and they're at least curious about what's different. I don't want to be like everybody else. I want everyone to see like there's something different about this. And so I literally think it just permeates into absolutely everything that we do.
yeah, I go back to if I don't have love, I'm just a clanging cymbal. I think that we can all agree that this life
Mm,
just going through the motions of, hey, how are you? And walking down. I try to be intentional to not say, how's it going? I try to be intentional to just say hi because I don't want to be perceived as the
yeah.
guy that's just like, oh, hey, how's it going? I remember one
Yeah.
time somebody said, how are you doing? And then the person said, I'm dying. And then that just stopped them
Oh,
in their tracks because at that moment they realized it was lip service. I wasn't in the moment asking
yes.
how you really felt, but you really told
Mhm.
me how you felt and what you were going through.
Mhm.
And I think that as you said so clearly, how can we be intentional about our faith if we do have intentional faith? And so working through that, I think is fantastic as we move into this idea of follower of one, of course, being a marketplace missionary, right? We're believers. There's no separation between, or there shouldn't be any separation between Sunday and Monday. Like if we say we're a believer, we should roll right through. And so I would love to share the categories of what we believe is a marketplace missionary. And so there are five pillars that follower of one stands on that we'll go through. And I would love for you to just share which one speaks to you the most. And so as we talked about and you've interacted, number one is pray. Number two is appreciate others. The third is know what you believe. Number four is to serve others. And number five is to speak for yourself. So as you think of yourself as a marketplace missionary, which one speaks to you the most and why?
Gosh, they're so good. But what really sticks out to me is know what you believe. One of the very first classes I took when I went back to school was a worship and praise class. And it focused so much on understanding that we cannot even praise and worship someone we don't understand. We can't live out and be following somebody we don't actually know who we're following. And because I grew up with this false idea of who God was, Mormonism completely changes the deity and the identity of God and the nature of the Godhead, right? It's one of the foundational teachings of their doctrine. So understanding that, like, I didn't even know God. And I thought I was praising and living my life after this God, but it, I was following the wrong idea all along. So understanding that, like, I've learned to find out who God truly is. One of the favorite scriptures I also read was when Christ asks Peter, who do you say I am? And I think he's asking us that. Like, it's important for us to know who he is. Who do we tell people he is? Because if we can't even articulate who he is, how can we say how we follow him or what it is we're supposed to do to follow him or why? So I think it's just at the core foundation of if we don't even know who, then what are we doing?
That is true. I had a great speaker last week at a conference I was attending talk about purpose and identity consistently come up with me. Identity is a big thing that I tend to focus on from my own personal story that I want to unpack now, but I do really agree with that. Like, we need to know who we are and whose we are at the
Mhm.
foundation of everything that we do, because if we don't, then we're going to constantly be chasing this idea of, well, I don't know who I am, but I know that I have this thing that I'm trying to chase and achieve. But then once we get there, it's fleeting. Solomon is very clear. There's a season and time for everything, and everything in this life is fleeting. The richest man in the world. So if he says that Lamborghinis aren't everything, I guess I got to believe him. But this idea of being intentional with our identity and just having, like you said, that 5 minutes a day to know what you believe, to press
Yeah.
in and to ask God to show up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I teach my clients is like, ask God, who do you say I am? We're always asking everyone in the world. We're asking significant others and we're looking for validation. And all we want really is just to be seen and understood. And no one sees and understands us better than God. And when we can then reciprocate and say, I know, I can articulate these specific things, we're never going to know him fully or understand him. But if we can at least articulate, I know these specific things, he has told us very clearly who he is, right? And he also tells us then very clearly who we are. And when we start at that foundation, then I think everything just builds off of that. Your faith can grow because we just have this innate desire, especially as women, to be seen, to be understood, to be heard, to be sat with, to be known. And no one can know you like the Father knows you. And then when you can start at that spot, like I think it just really is the foundation truly for your faith and for your relationships with your children and for romantic relationships or family relationships or business relationships because you're sturdy and you have the rock, you have the foundation. I know who I am. I don't need validation from anybody else, or I'm not looking for approval from somebody else, or I'm not looking for permission. Like I know how to tap into God. I know how to communicate with him. I know how to receive and to give and to know where he wants me to go and what he wants me to do. And I can stand firm and confident in that. And then it's just a game changer for so many women to be able to understand that.
So good. With that being said, for those listening,
Yeah.
whenever you say, I know who I am, I don't need that external validation, would you mind
Mhm.
unpacking that just a little bit to say, how do you separate from the naysayers? How do you separate to say, I am who I say I am, no matter what you say, like I've got this, but just the dynamic of life, because life truly happens very fast. Obstacles are
Yeah.
going to be thrown at us. How do you continue to ground yourself in that presence of God or your trust in yourself? Like, what does that dynamic look like for you practically so that our listeners could take that with them?
Yeah, I think for me, it started understanding like Christ as the bridegroom and me as the bride. You know, post divorce, I'm single, and now I'm like, okay, I know I'm supposed to have some kind of a union, but I don't want just any kind of a union. I want a real genuine connection and I want a godly biblical union, but I don't even know what that means. I'd never been taught that in my whole life. So it started with me understanding, how am I Christ's bride and who does he say I am? So I just searched and found so many things about who he says I am. And it's not like people don't impact my emotions because I still get offended. I still want validation. I still want approval. I still want connection. I still want to be loved by humans, right? But as I've gone on this journey, I've understood that regardless of how much love or approval or connection or disconnection or dislike, he says we're going to be persecuted for his name's sake. We're not supposed to have everyone's approval. And so when I'm seeking, and I have to catch myself, I think we all do. We have to catch ourselves. Like, I have to stop and realize I'm actually seeking for this person's approval over my God's approval and
Mm.
my God's desire. And then I have to be like, okay. And sometimes God stops me. He's like, bring it back. Bring it back. Like, remember, this is where we're at. But it all starts in like spending time building that relationship. I have to remember that he has to be my priority in order for me to really make anybody else a priority, because otherwise I'm bringing my own human desires and my own human weaknesses and my own frailties and seeking for another human to fill it for me when it's really only God. And then that feels terrible, to be like expecting someone else to complete me, and then vice versa, knowing that I'm not ever going to be enough for somebody else because it just isn't my job. It's just not
Right.
my role. So it just frees you from the burden of trying to fill a role and calling that really only God can give and fill. And so when I'm focused there and I really understand like this relationship of the bride and the bridegroom, I can then point my children there, and I can appoint my friends there, and any clients or women that I just talked to or acquaintances. I can just be firm and like, I know God. And I know really firmly who he has told me I am. Not that it doesn't get shaken, not that I don't have doubts, and not that I don't have to manage that still. But at the end of the day, I can still go back and he's there, and he's the steady rock, and he's always unchanging, and he's never going to fail me. And that's where I have to come back to is like, what does his word say? What does he say about me? And who do I know? And stay back in that. And then I can kind of be like, okay, now I can let all of these people just be who they are, and I can let God work on them and in their season, and he can work on me, and I can just focus on what does he need to work on in me, what do I need to be working on, what are those character development things that I'm clearly lacking of. I've got a huge beam in my eye, right? So like he's going to be taking care of everybody else, and it just is so much less pressure, and I can enjoy my relationships and I show up better in my relationships, and it's just so much more freeing also. And I think his love, like I'm not actually even loving anybody from myself, I'm loving him from the abundance of love he gives me.
Mm.
And so when I love from that place, it's so much more genuine of a connection and a genuine allowance of that person to be whoever they are, regardless of what I think they should be, because it's not even about me. It's about, this other person is a creation of God, and he knows them perfectly, and he loves them equally as much as he loves me, even though I think their flaws are worse than mine. But that's not true.
And that leads us back to your original statement, which is to know what you believe. And
Yeah.
I feel that you're always going to have questions if you don't seek the clarity of the word
Yeah.
and your relationship with God. So, Katie Ann, this has been such an awesome conversation with you today. I would love to leave the floor open. Is there anything else that you would like to say or encourage our audience with as we close out our time on this show?
If there would be anything I could say, I would just be to stand firm in who you know that God has created you to be. Like he says, if he is with us, who can be against us? And 1 John 4:4 is, for he who is in me is greater than he who is in the world. Like when you stand firm on those, there truly is nothing that can overcome you. That is a powerful statement, that his spirit literally resides in you and you have his power to wield. I was reading in Gideon, the story of Gideon and the army of 300, and they go to war against this army of like 30,000 or something with no weapons. They have no weapons. They have a lantern and a trumpet. And I was reading this and I was like, wait a second. And they are shouting, their war cry is, our God is our sword. Like
Mm.
if we lived as God is our sword, we don't need the weapon. God is our weapon. And when we're doing the desires of his heart, he's paving the way all the time. Like they had a lantern and a trumpet. Like that's right. And then the other army turns on themselves and starts killing each other. Like nobody can write that story but God. Nobody
Yeah.
can make those things happen but God. And I think He's doing those things in our lives, but we focus on all the things that are not going right or how we are ill-equipped instead of how equipped our God is.
Yes. All the above. Mic drop moment. And so true. How often do we think that we have to have it all figured out, or we have to be the ones to make the choices or make the decisions? And of course, in life, you will have to make choices and decisions, but ultimately, the battle belongs to the Lord. And it's so true of what you're saying. I love that. I think that's such a powerful reminder for us to take, that we don't have to have it all figured out, but moving the needle to trust God more faithfully each and every day and to know what we believe and continue that process each and every day. I think that's when we can celebrate in the fact that we can have each other and a trumpet and let God do the battle fighting for us.
Right. Yeah. It's good. He's good.
Absolutely. Katie Ann, it has been such an honor to spend this time with you today. I greatly appreciate it. Katie Ann Coaching, you are certainly a marketplace missionary, and thank you for
Thank you.
highlighting how much you believe and are faithful with the calling that you have, the purpose, and then also the identity that you have in Christ. So thank you very much. This has been an excellent episode of Follower of One. Once again, Katie Ann, thank you. My name is Addison Williams, and we will see you next time. As you go, live your faith with intention. Pray, appreciate others, know what you believe, serve others, speak for yourself. These small steps shape a faithful life. Wherever God has placed you, walk it out with courage. You are a missionary.